Distance can be a major barrier to accessing quality healthcare on time. That's where Angel Flight East comes in. Welcome to Takeoff Talk with Angel Flight East, a nonprofit dedicated to providing free flights for children and adults who need medical treatment far from home. We don't know how many people forego medical care because they don't have accessible transportation, and that's what this podcast is here to change. Join passionate AFE staff members Jess, Ames, and Maddy, Beck as they share real-life stories from people who have used AFE services to get the care they need when they need it.
Hey, frequent flyers. Welcome back with another episode of Takeoff Talk. You're here with me, Maddy.
And me, Jess.
And today we have pilot Lawrence.
Good afternoon.
So how long have you been flying with Angel Flight East?
I actually started flying with Angel Flight East only about 5 months ago.
Welcome to the club.
A newbie.
I signed up last year, but it took a while to get over my initial fear of carrying people that I didn't know.
That's actually the second conversation today we've had about stranger to stranger interactions with or public benefit flying.
Well, once I started, I love it. It's great.
That's awesome. How did you find Angel Flight?
I'm a member of a flying club, and one of our members gave a talk on it. And so I said, I'm flying all over the countryside doing nothing. Might as well make it worth my while and visit new places.
Which flying club is it?
Congressional Flying Club out of Gaithersburg, Maryland.
Oh, nice. Who gave the talk on it? We have to know who's talking about us.
That was a fellow by name of Johannes Van Dam.
Yeah, I know him. So why do you volunteer? What part of his talk really sparked an interest for you?
Well, I worked as a family doctor for 40 years, and I retired a few years back, and I missed the interaction with people. With COVID and everything, I was pretty much isolated. And when I started flying again in this area, I moved up here from Florida a few years back. And when I started flying, I found out that most of the airports I was visiting were abandoned. People were not coming out. The restaurants a lot of them were not open. And I was flying to the same places over and over and over again. And when Johannes started talking about, taking people who needed to be somewhere and making, connections, I got interested.
That's awesome.
Do you have a favorite flight that you've done with us?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The last flight I took was it was kind of confusing because the sign up was all messed up. This was a 14-year-old kid with a very serious disease that caused horrible malnutrition. So he weighed 47 pounds. Well, somebody looked at that and said, no, 14 is wrong. It must be 4. So they made it a 4-year-old kid. And for some reason, mother went from 145 to 200. And I'm 200 pounds myself. So I'm sitting there doing weight and balance all over the place, trying to figure out how to get this kid around. We got it all straightened out. The boy was just fantastic. I emailed him and I said, is there anything you want for the flight? Because I usually try to provide, some snacks or something. He said, yeah, Funyuns.
Oh.
He said, Funyuns? Yeah, that's what he wanted, Funyuns or Doritos. And he asked, are there any Legos on the flight? I said, yeah, I can get you some Legos, but you can't open the package in the airplane.
Geez, I wouldn't be a passenger on your flight then.
Well, I've been on a lot of airplane flights all over the world, and boredom is easy enough. It's worse when you're in a small airplane. There's lots of things going on that large airplanes don't have. The first Angel flight I took, the crosswinds were near maximum and gusty. And I warned the people I was flying that it was going to be kind of rough. After the flight, which turned out once we got to altitude was very calm. It was really nice, but the landings and takeoffs were horrible. And I apologized, and they said, "Oh, we've had worse." I don't know if they said that to make me feel better, but they were reasonably happy with it. And I volunteered to take them again. They're going back in September. I didn't hear any objections, so but this young kid, we were flying from Massachusetts to South Carolina, North Carolina, and there was a fuel stop in Richmond on the way. Well, the Canadian fires were going on and really nasty, so it was total instrument flight from takeoff to landing the whole way. They had nothing to see but clouds. So we land in Richmond, and I asked the family if they wanted to get something to eat, because Richmond, that airport, has a fairly decent cafeteria. And they said yes, and I said, great, okay. I had planned the flight to take 2.5 hours from Massachusetts to Richmond and about 2 hours to get to North Carolina. As it turned out, the child had such a bad disease, he took 2.5 hours to eat a small amount of food.
Wow.
And I took it. I mean, I had nowhere else to go. As we got back down to Charlotte, the weather had cleared a bit, and I circled the Motor Speedway in Charlotte. He got a kick out of that. But he was just such a wonderful little boy, and I felt so bad for him and his family. The child has a really serious disease. He probably won't live a lot longer, but he was upbeat and hopeful and happy to do anything.
That's amazing. I feel
really
like
rewarding.
we don't hear a lot about how the pilots go above and beyond for passengers. So you just telling that story just makes all the more impact on what our volunteer pilots do for our patients.
Well, as a doctor and a professor of medicine, I get them at the end of the line. They've made the trip, they get into my office or my clinic or whatever, and I'm all business. What's wrong with you? What can we do for you? TikTok, give me the story and let's get on with it. It's very rare nowadays to be able to have somebody to actually do something more than just, here you go, take it and leave it. So, I always try to look, at this point, I try to look for something extra, for what I can do for the people that are in my airplane, because they're putting a lot of faith in my 1979 177. Although interestingly, the one I flew back from Massachusetts to Ohio, I'm flying them from Pennsylvania to Massachusetts in September, because somebody else picked up the first part of the flight. I usually don't like to do half a flight. And the guy taking them from Ohio to Pennsylvania is flying a Warrior. So they're going to squeeze this kid into a smaller airplane than mine. They'll be very happy to get in mine.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, my airplane has bad upholstery. And after the second flight, I bought new seat cushions for both me and the passengers. My flights now are, from start to finish, are taking between 13 and 14 hours. It's a long time to be sitting in that seat.
Yeah, that is a long time.
Well, I have to fly from my home base to wherever I'm picking them up, which is a couple hours, and then it's a couple hours for the first leg, 2 or 3 hours for the second leg. Next week, I'm flying somebody from Rutgers, New Jersey to Michigan. And the flight back is going to be a 6-hour ordeal. So
Wow, that's a long day.
yeah, but shoot, luckily I have an autopilot to do a lot of the work. And, for the most part, it's just watching the gauges and making sure I've got a place to land in an emergency. And, I have pictures from my flights that I've sent you where the passenger are asleep, and well, that's perfectly fine with me. If I can be boring enough that the passengers can sleep on my airplane, I'm very happy with that.
That's always a sign of a good pilot. So now, are we the only organization that's keeping you busy in retirement?
So far, money is somewhat of an obstacle. 13 hours in the airplane cost me about $1,500. And, right now I'm doing one a month.
That's awesome.
In a couple of years, my retirement kicks in and I got to start spending a lot more money.
We'll definitely call you.
I might
Yeah,
pick
now we
up something else. I mean, being from Florida, Turtle Flight is calling me, and I don't know if the other guys in my flying club will appreciate what's left over after I fly a Turtle, 800 miles.
Is that Turtles Fly too?
Yeah.
We love them.
I want one of their t-shirts.
So what made you want to become a pilot in the first place?
Well, I always loved airplanes. I used to hang out at airports and watch. My father did not like little airplanes, and he would not let me get training. When I was growing up, controlled airspace was a whole different ballgame, and navigation was very, very primitive. Non-directional beacons, which I learned when I was starting out, but they're totally gone now. The airplanes that I fly don't even have the receivers for them. And, I had to put that aside for my medical education and getting into practice, having kids, sending them off to college. But at one point, my son got interested in Civil Air Patrol. So I joined Civil Air Patrol as a medical officer, and they needed pilots. So I talked to a couple of the pilots who were working with Civil Air Patrol, and I got training, and I got my certification. I got my instrument rating, and I started flying all over the countryside. My wife said she wasn't flying in any of those damn little airplanes. So I sort of put that on hold for a few years. But when I moved up to Maryland from Florida after my wife passed away, I needed something to do, and flying was a good idea. So I started back in.
There you go. Sounds like the perfect hobby to keep you busy. If you could say anything to a volunteer pilot that's listening, or even somebody who's not a volunteer pilot yet and is thinking about becoming one, what would you say?
Don't be afraid of it. When I am teaching in Civil Air Patrol, we get kids who don't want to take the tests. They don't want to promote because they're afraid of getting yelled at. And I train the officer staff. I was a squadron commander. And I take the officer staff aside and I say, look, we have to impress on the younger kids, because they're 12, 13, 14 years old, that we want them to win. We want them to succeed. The people that you're flying for Angel flights are not doing it because they want to save money. They're not doing it for convenience. They're doing it because they need to be somewhere to get the help they need. And they want to go, and they're willing to put up with a lot to get there. So, a pilot who says, well, my airplane's old, or, gee, I'm kind of rusty, don't be that way. You get used to filing flight plans, you get used to following air traffic control. you meet the most wonderful people who really, really want to be there. It's the most rewarding experience anyone can have, short of winning the lottery.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because even what you said about passengers really will go jump through hoops to get to where they need to go. Even some of our flights that could be 2 to 3 legs, we always tell them it's going to be a very long day of travel, and we just want to make sure it's the best mode of transportation for them. And they're always just so willing to do whatever it takes to get to that treatment that they need, because a lot of times this could be their last option or their last hope.
Well, flying commercial, you take off, you climb to 30,000 feet, you see nothing. There's a green splotch down below if the clouds don't get in the way, and that's it. In my airplane at 7,000 or 8,000 feet, I'm flying over, western Massachusetts, and I point out the Hudson River. I show them, the sights. They get to see things that they wouldn't see on a commercial flight. A lot of the people are very surprised at what they see.
And I bet they would much rather fly private or general aviation airplane now than commercial, because nobody likes to fly commercial. It takes too long.
The flight I took, the person from Central Massachusetts to North Carolina, if they had to go to Boston Logan from where they were, which was the closest commercial airport, and fly to a hub, Charlotte, to get to their house, after all the TSA and the boarding wait and everything, I beat them by half an hour.
Yeah, I believe
it's
it.
It's not necessarily the slow way.
Let alone it's also the safer way. Like, especially you as a physician know, they're exposed to so much less by just flying directly with you instead of flying with every Tom, Joe, and Jim who's in the Boston Logan airport.
Not to mention the crowds at the airports, people who are flying, sick because they really, really want to get there and they've already got their ticket and they're not going to get a refund.
Right.
It's not something I stress to the passengers, basically because they don't need to know all that stuff. All they know is they've got a way to get home. I'm going to make it as nice as I can for them. And they're very, very appreciative of anything I do.
That leads me to another question, and this is off the sheet, so sorry.
Okay.
So what would you say to any medical professionals listening about bringing a patient to Angel Flight if they're apprehensive or if they have questions or anything like that?
Medical professionals, we already know what's up. You give us a diagnosis and we can give you chapter and verse on what the problem is, how it's being treated, what to expect. There are no surprises. Just being a medical professional, if I'm, flying along and the passengers tell me I've got a problem, I need to be down. The nice thing is I don't have to look, very far to find a place to land. On a commercial flight, if they notify the stewardess that they have a problem, first of all, there's no medical kit on airplanes. Commercial jets do not have the supplies necessary to support someone until they get on the ground. They have to get air traffic control to find a large airport where they can land and then arrange for transportation somewhere. I can get a small towered airport within 20 miles, 30 miles of wherever I'm flying. I can get in touch with air traffic, with the tower. I can say I have a medical emergency and I'm going to need an ambulance on the field. And I land right in front of the ambulance. There's no big deal.
Yeah.
So what I would say to medical professionals is, if you had a choice between flying commercial and flying private, I would tell sick people, go private.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't even think about that part.
Where would you say your favorite place is to fly to?
Oh, geez.
How do you choose?
We won't blame
Yeah,
you if you said
yeah.
Florida.
No, I mean, I flew in Florida for 10 years and it's a nightmare. Some of the air traffic controllers are very nice. If you're flying into Miami's airspace, be ready to get yelled at. They don't care. My favorite place to fly right now is Westchester, New York, because I fly up the Hudson River at 1,000 feet. And I
Looks
get
so
to see
pretty.
all the sights. On the way back, I get to circle the Statue of Liberty.
That is.
We are definitely going on that flight next time.
Come on down. I'll take you and show you all the sights. I mean, I fly past Central Park. I fly right near Yankee Stadium. I fly over the Intrepid Carrier Museum. And it's low enough that you see just about. I'm about 200 or 300 feet below the tops of the buildings.
Wow, that's amazing.
And
Wave at people in their offices.
the biggest secret is nobody knows about it. It's actually a visual flight path. And you don't even have to file a flight plan. You just have to get to the right altitude and call out your checkpoints as you go along the Hudson. I fly from the Verrazano Narrows Bridge up to the Tappan Zee Bridge north of the city, and I turn right and get my my okay to get into Westchester and take a landing, call an Uber, and I can go downtown and party for whatever I want.
That's so fun. Not
As a
party
ma-
too hard though, because it's like what, 8 hours bottle of throttle?
Oh no, from Gaithersburg, it's a 2-hour flight
There you go.
to Westchester. But I mean, my partner and I, we usually take a bus or a train to New York, 3.5 hours. And then you got to take the subway and all. I said, gee whiz, why don't we just fly to Westchester and take an Uber to the hotel? I go to the opera up there, and a few times a year we go to Jazz at Lincoln Center, and we get a room at Central Park South. And I said, why are we fooling around with all this nonsense, 3.5 hours of travel? And at one point there was a traffic accident on I-95, and she got hung up on the bus for 4 or 5 hours.
Oh
I said,
no.
fly up to Westchester, 2 hours. It's an hour drive down to the city, and we're there, for lunch.
That is the dream.
I mean, the biggest problem I find with pilots is they don't realize their potential. They fly to the same places all the time. They don't vary it. They don't look for adventures. They don't look for changes. They practice, but when it comes down to it, they're not really using their skills for anything productive. I see these guys in $1 million airplanes, and they're buzzing from their home here to their grandpa's house or Aunt Sally's. They're not saying, hey, why don't we fly out to the Smokies and spend the week in a chalet up there?
That's where I want to be.
It's a great place. I spent a week in the Smokies, and they've got some really nice houses for rent, cheap. You live up on the side of the mountain. You're looking out over the park.
Yeah, Maddie's planning our next vacation now.
She just doesn't know it yet.
Well, there's a chateau at the top of Mount LeCompte, 6,495 feet, and you have to hike up. It's an 8-hour hike, but you get dinner and you get to sleep in the chalet for a couple nights if you want. And they've got a great buffet breakfast, and then you hike down.
Wow.
On Mondays, they have a llama train that hikes up to take supplies. That's how they get their supplies up there.
I
A
wanna go with
llama
the
train?
llamas.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
llama train.
I love that. I didn't even know that was a term. I got to find some other way to use that in my life.
Look it up.
I have a lot of Googling to do. So now, what is the final thing that you would leave our listeners with?
I have been in a lot of service industries. I've been in medicine. I've been in Civil Air Patrol. I've been in the National Association for Search and Rescue. I have done a lot of service. And this is probably the most rewarding use of my time that I have found.
Wow. That is amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much for all you do for both us and our passengers.
Oh, trust me, it's my pleasure.
We appreciate you. And thank you so much for joining us today. We are looking forward to sharing your story with all of our listeners.
You're very welcome.
That's it for today's episode of Takeoff Talk with Angel Flight East. If you want to learn more about our services, please visit our website at www.angelflighteast.org or call our office at 215-358-1900. Join us in our mission. If you're a healthcare worker or a patient in need of air travel and flight services, AFE is here for you. Subscribe to the show so you can hear more stories. Join us again next week right here on Takeoff Talk.